Well, here and there around the web, we're starting to see a narrative develop. America finally has an intellectual president. Isn't that great? New Scientist magazine tries to make the case, accompanied by an illustration of the American flag being lowered as the new big brain flag is being raised. Slate magazine ran a piece called The Logic of Empathy and made the comparison between the president and the Lord of Logic himself. Maureen Dowd, no less, brings her usual intellectual firepower to the mix, writing in the New York Times of a dream she had about President Obama coming to the financial rescue of the New York Times. When she asked him if he would help sell subscriptions, which seems only fair after what the Times did for his campaign, Obama gave Madame Dowd, quote, that wry Vulcan look, unquote. Maureen also helpfully provided Newsweek magazine with a handy Star Trek Obama cabinet comparison chart, listing the president as Mr. Spock, of course, and Rush Limbaugh as an evil, scary, evil, angry, scary, evil, angry Klingon. Miss Dowd closed her Times piece with the sentence, Kirk out. My friends, there are some things that simply cannot be borne, and this is one of them. All hands, this is the captain. Nerd alert, all hands to prattle stations. This is not a drill.
Captain's log, stardate 2009.5. While in Earth orbit for standard refit and repairs, the Enterprise is encountering unexpected density waves of immense power. They appear to be emanating from a triangle bordered by the New York Times building, Newsweek magazine's editorial offices, and the MSNBC Studio Center. The ship's science section hypothesizes that the mental distortion in this area is so great that normal matter is being broken down into extremely dense subatomic particles called morons. These morons move back and forth between the Times, Newsweek, and MSNBC, setting up a feedback effect. While normally quite rare, conditions in Midtown Manhattan are such that literally millions of high-level morons are compressed in an area a few blocks across. It seems that some recent event of surpassing density has generated millions of new morons, which are now in a feedback loop that threatens to destroy the local arm of the galaxy. Federation science knows of only one force in the universe that dense. Maureen Dowd is writing again.
You know what's really alarming? Obama is like Spock. But that would mean that Maureen Dowd may have gotten something right, which violates all known laws of physics. But I do have a theory. Perhaps by signing off the Times article with the sentence Kirk out, Maureen Dowd created an idea so dense, perhaps as much as 6 kilo-Olbermanns, that it ripped open the fabric of space-time and gave us a quick glimpse into an alternate reality. Now perhaps in this up-is-down, black-is-white world, Ronald Reagan was a communist agitator bent on destroying America. Noam Chomsky was awarded the Medal of Honor at Omaha Beach on D-Day in 1944. Maybe Janine Garofalo is a former Miss California, happily married mother of 3 and quite sane. And in that mirror image universe, we test our sanity trying to imagine Keith Olbermann as a well-respected network journalist. Because let's face it, in many important ways, Barack Obama is Mr. Spock. Both are children of mixed heritage who completely identify with the exotic, absent father over the loving, if more pedestrian mother. Both are aloof, cool, distant, and unknowable. Both of them are known to deliberate almost endlessly on thorny problems, weighing first one side, then the other, trying to come up with the most pragmatic solution. And both of them are precisely the people you do not want sitting here in the big chair. Now, to explain what the Captain President should not be, let's start with what he should be. And to do that, a little background would be helpful. When Gene Roddenberry took his idea for a science fiction show to the networks in the mid-'60s, television was in love with westerns, Gunsmoke, Bonanza, The Big Valley, Branded, Rawhide. So he pitched his idea as, quote, a wagon train to the stars, unquote. But that's not what Gene really wanted to do. No, what Roddenberry was really interested in would be based on a series of stories about a young Royal Naval officer at the time of the Napoleonic Wars named Horatio Hornblower. Now, what fascinated Gene about the Hornblower adventures was the idea that the ship was on the far side of the world with no hope of communication with Royal Naval authorities. Now, that meant that whoever stood on that deck as captain not only represented Britain, he was Britain. He alone was a man of such character that he could be trusted to make decisions on behalf of his king and his country in utter absence of instructions or advice. So Gene turned in his Star Trek pilot, a simply brilliant piece of work called The Cage. It starred Jeffrey Hunter as Christopher Pike, who, like Hornblower, was introspective, aloof, isolated by his rank and his dignity. But The Cage, for all of its intellectual brilliance, was nothing like the space western that he had promised NBC, but they liked it just enough so that they did something almost unprecedented. They gave him another chance. So he made a second pilot called Where No Man Has Gone Before. It had a new lead character played by an up-and-coming Canadian actor named William Shatner, but this new captain, Captain Kirk, was cut much more from the TV Western mold than the original Captain Pike. He was more physical, more extroverted, more action-oriented, more charming, frankly, more American. Nobody knew, not Roddenberry, not William Shatner, not the cast and the crew, not the writers, and certainly not the network executives. No one guessed that what they had done together was create the template for the only genuinely American mythology of the modern world. You see this room, the bridge of the USS Enterprise? This is America, right here. Multicultural, multiracial, the product of a federation based upon individuality, freedom, and human dignity. And like Captain Hornblower, who was Great Britain, Roddenberry's vision was that the man in the command chair was the Federation. And that meant that Kirk was the idealized American, sure of himself and his civilization, intelligent and friendly, but with a spine of steel. A man who not only likes to win, but who lives to win. A whole man, unbroken, confident, and secure. You see, Kirk, Spock, and McCoy are not really three people at all. McCoy is emotion, empathy, passion, and ethics. Spock is intellect, reason, logic, and pragmatism. Each one of them is broken, a half person. But Kirk is whole. Kirk is the will. Kirk is action. Kirk, and only Kirk, is in balance. This is why whenever the intellectual, Spock, is in command of the Enterprise, the ship is out of balance and everybody knows it. The lack of confidence in Spock as a commander is an ongoing theme in the original series. Even Spock knows it. As a matter of fact, the entire premise of the new movie is that Spock takes an extraordinary risk to make sure that he himself is not sitting in the command chair, because no one knows more than Spock just how dangerous it is to have an intellectual in charge. I'll show you what I mean. Let's start by taking the smartest guy in the room. Mr. President, welcome to the Enterprise.
It's a pleasure to be here, Bill.
Okay, I'd like to compare the elite, Harvard-educated Barack Obama to a simple farm boy from Iowa, let's say. Now, no question Mr. Obama knows more about international relations, economic theory, literature, foreign culture, all of that. But there are some things that he knows less about than the farm boy. He knows less about repairing a tractor, probably, and he certainly knows less about growing corn. But these are relatively unimportant skills at the upper levels of power. So far, it looks like the intellectual's your man.
I'm glad to hear it.
One moment, sir. I'm sorry, I'm not finished yet. Now, let's take 10 people, and let's say that Barack Obama is smarter than any one of them. Now, one of them is a pharmacist, let's say. One's an accountant, one runs a gas station. But Barack Obama doesn't know more about drug interaction than the pharmacist. He doesn't know more about accounting than the accountant. And he sure as hell doesn't know more about running the gas station than the guy that, actually runs the gas station. But the problem is, he and others like him think that they do. Because they're smarter than any one of these people, the elitist thinks that he's smarter than all of them combined. And this is the fatal danger with putting intellectuals in positions of power.
I find your lack of faith disturbing.
I have no doubt that you do, sir. Okay, now take 300 million people and make them the product of almost 2.5 centuries of tinkering, tweaking, adjusting, and evolving social norms. People skilled in contract law, weapons systems, chemical factories, air traffic control, power plants, strawberry farms, coal mines, textile mills, biotech labs, automotive repair stations, barbershops, tattoo parlors. I can go on and on and on. Take all of those hundreds of millions of lives, multiply it by years and decades of experience, and the only person stupid enough to think that one person is smarter than all of those people combined is an intellectual. Mr. President, you've been very generous with your time. Thank you for joining us.
Always a pleasure, Bill. Smile confidently and wave goodbye.
Look, if humans were as predictable as the laws of nature, a scientist intellectual would be the ideal president. But humans are not numbers, and their actions are not governed by logic and reason. The skill in dealing with people is not skill at chess, which attempts to look into the predictable future of logical moves. It's poker. It's the ability to bluff and to read a bluff. So if our Vulcan-in-chief decides it's a good chess move to show goodwill by, let's say, dismantling a missile defense system, the poker player knows that by having such a system in place, he immeasurably complicates the opponent's calculations of risk and success. He'd never give that up. Look, even if it were absolutely worthless, it turns out it's far from worthless, but even if it was, as long as he could bluff his opponent into believing that it was effective, then it would perform a deterrent function no better or worse than one that actually was real. Now, it is true that almost all of the actors and writers associated with the creation of the original Star Trek are very left-wing, as are most theoretical scientists and intellectuals. But the people that Gene Roddenberry drew on for inspiration, the astronauts and the engineers of the Mercury, Gemini, and Apollo programs, almost all of them were and remain spectacularly conservative people, as are naval officers like Captain Kirk, who was given enormous power and responsibility by those who governed the Federation because they knew that Kirk would defend and preserve the Federation as it was entrusted to him, not the Federation he wanted to remake in his own image. Just stop me if any of this sounds familiar. So if Maureen Dowd doesn't particularly remind me of Captain Kirk, there is one member of the Enterprise crew she absolutely does resemble, and that's Nurse Chapel. A little frumpy, a little dowdy. Sort of the unpopular girl who knows she's unpopular and so develops a lifelong crush on the cool, distant, cerebral intellectual she knows she can never have because no one can ever have him. Chapel knows, as Maureen Dowd knows deep down, that she doesn't stand a chance. Not with the real man, who wears the gold jersey and who sits in the big chair where he belongs.